What's up, guys, and welcome back to the podcast. So my name is Robbie Cassidy, and today's podcast I'm going to discuss preseason training, what you should focus on, what you should look at, and kind of how you should get yourself ready for the next couple of weeks leading up to the season again, where this podcast is obviously going to be put out in January, and a lot of people have been working in the off season. Some people took it off because I know years ran late last year. And especially in GAA, a lot of guys playing up until December. And I just speaking to a guy recently who's playing a match on the 7th of January. So that's, when you think about it, like years that are going on that long are really going to take the toll on the body. And a lot of the time with this, you're not giving it a chance to recover, or you're not giving yourself a chance to kind of switch off for a small while so you can get back into it. And the off season is really important for that. And I've done a podcast on the off season and off season training, so I won't go on about it too much. But when we're looking at preseason training, is a small bit of a shift in mindset, in that off season training is more about relaxing and getting the body, I guess, letting the body kind of recover from the season, changing your focus to something else so that you're not just always thinking about the same sport, the same activity, and giving yourself a chance to kind of recuperate and reflect on the year that went by. Now, the preseason is a small bit different. When I look at the preseason, I think that it's a time that you're nearly prepping the body and mind for the season. Now, you don't want to go full hog at the very start of the year, because it is a long year. And as I was saying, there's teams that are still playing and that will still be playing until February and March even. So because of that, you need to really just, I guess, start slowly and then progressively build. Now, what you should be focusing on is obviously a small bit different than the off-season. In the off-season, you have time to kind of mess around, try out new things, see how the body's feeling, see what type of exercises you like, see what type of different sports you like, and you've time to kind of, I guess, experiment. In the pre-season, then, you can still experiment with things, but it's important to look at prepping the body and mind, as I said, for the season. But you need to really look at building strength in the preseason, and you need to look at prehab as well, because you're obviously over the rehab stage, or you should be, let's say, from the injuries you had last year. That's kind of the off-season side of things. Now you're moving on to the prehab side of things, where you need to focus on, say, recurring injuries that you get during the year, what you can do right now to take care of them, as well as looking at it kind of holistically as well, and not just focusing specifically on the exercises, but maybe looking at when the injury happened last year, what else was going on at the time. Because a lot of the time it's that the body's fatigued and then the injury starts to flare up, or the injury reoccurs, or maybe it was your first time doing like a hamstring injury or an ankle sprain or a knee injury or a shoulder injury. It could just be that it flared up because you had such a high training load combined with other things as well. And if you, I suppose, take the time in the preseason to take note of everything that was going on at the time of injury, well, then you have a good opportunity to, I guess, become more aware of it. If it starts to build up in season, you can lay off the training, or you can lay off whatever else is bearing down on you. Or maybe it might be that you need to take care of something like your sleep, your hydration, or your diet at that time of the year. And if you get a good understanding of what was contributing to it in the preseason, then, as I said, you can become more aware of it, but you can build higher tolerance to those loads in the preseason. And what I mean is that, as I said, most injuries happen with fatigue. So you can work on biomechanics, you can work on coordination, you can work on mobility, you can work on movement in a fatigue state. And now you can do that in season as well, but you can do it in a controlled environment in the preseason. So what you might be able to do, and what I do with a lot of clients, is that I'll get them to go through a session, whether it be a gym session or a mobility session or a running session or whatever it is. And then at the end of the session, I'll add a couple of exercises, prehab exercises for injuries that they may have had during the year. And the goal of that is to work on the body in a fatigue state, so it's better able to handle load in a fatigue state. Because when you're fully fit and everything's right, injuries obviously do happen, but they're less likely, or the fatigue-related injuries are less likely. So building a tolerance to that is a great way to start your preseason. Now, as I said, you have the opportunity to prehab injuries, and what I would say is to gradually improve condition. You don't need to go 100% at the start. You have time to kind of build it up. And what I would say a lot of people need to add into their preseason more is just light runs and building up a tolerance for runs and running, because itself, I'm the same myself. I do it all the time. Is that you wait in the wintertime? Obviously, no one wants to go running, but you wait until you get back on the pitch, and then depending on what your management team is like, or depending on what your team like, or the attitude, a lot of people, it depends how far you got the year before, they want to start with a bang. So they'll go out the first day and they'll just sprint, or they'll run players into the ground. Now that, although it can improve fitness, it can improve aerobic capacity, all that, but you're at higher risk of injury, especially if you're coming off the back of a late injury in the year before. Just going and running as hard as you can the first couple of sessions. And the thing is, when you're running, you're going to, if you're running with your team especially, you're going to base yourself off of other players in the team. So if there's guys there that are smashing it and running hard, and you're used to running hard, but you know that you've had a hamstring injury, at times that competitiveness can creep in. And I see it with players, and I talk to people all the time or I jump on consults all the time, that they were saying there was one run left, and my mate was really pushing on, and I wanted to make sure that I was going to take the last run, or that I was going to win it, even though I knew I was a bit tight, and then it went. It was a stupid thing. You'll always hear people saying things like that, and it's common. But if you build a tolerance early in the preseason to running and sprinting, then that is less likely to happen. So the first day you get back to training, first you're not going to be as gassed, but you'll be able to handle that better, and you'll have progressively increased your running over the couple of weeks before that. Okay, so I would say to definitely do it now. I don't mean just running 5Ks and 10Ks and that. I would actually look more at doing like 75% sprints, build them up to maybe 95% sprint at different times, and do it once a week or twice a week, whatever you feel is sustainable and that's not killing yourself. It's also a good time to monitor how injuries flare up. And I use this with people all the time, is that I'll get them to do runs specifically to see what kicks up, because it's perfect time to, if something kicks up, you have whatever 5 weeks to get it right. While if you wait till the season happens and then something kicks up, you're kind of managing it while they're getting ready for league at the same time. Or there's a guy trying to make a name for himself on a team. So you're kind of building it at the same level. So that's why if you do that, and if you work through it, and you kind of get your tolerance built up to some bit of sprinting, at the same time monitoring symptoms and monitoring how the body's holding up, well, then you can take care of those. So let's say it flares up, you come back, we say, okay, it flared up here on the fifth run at, let's say, a 70-meter run, and you were running 75%. Well, we need to work on that, and we need to build on that, and make sure that the next time you go out that it's less likely to happen, and the next time then you're getting rid of it completely. So by taking that mindset, you have the chance to monitor and then take off, and then monitor and take off. And I think that it's definitely something that people miss out on, because they go to training and they run hard and they're, Jesus, that I'm tight after that, or I'm sore after that, and then they don't ever really take care of that issue. So moving, I guess, from that onto like, what are the main issues that you see with preseason work? There's kind of a lot of the same issues that you will see with off-season work, is that people either do little to nothing in the preseason, they're doing too much too fast, or they're focusing on the wrong type of training. Now, there's obviously other things as well, but doing little to nothing in the preseason is going to leave you at risk of injury. There's no question when you get back into season, because it's less manageable when you get into the season, because your training nights are set. While in the preseason, you can train a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and take a Thursday, Friday off if you want to. So you have that opportunity to kind of manage your week and work your week around and kind of work things into it to see how you're feeling. But if you're doing nothing at all in the preseason, then, as I was saying, it's just that bit harder to monitor symptoms and monitor the body and see how things are. Now, if you're doing too much, that's the opposite effect. You don't want to do too much and then increase your risk of injury, but you also don't want to do too much and burn out. And what I mean by like burnout is a word thrown around a lot. Really, when I'm looking at burnout, rarely do you hit such high training volumes that the body completely burns out, because you need to be training a long time to get that, and you need to be training a lot of time, like 4 hours a day. Like there's a lot that goes into burnout. It's not just running or doing it every session. Basically, you can get the physical burnout, that's what I was talking about there. Mental burnout as well is another big one, where you just lack the motivation. Where as the year goes on, you lose motivation for training, you start to get inconsistent in your diet, you're inconsistent at your sleep and your hydration, and you're inconsistent with your, you're not consistent, with your gym work, and you're not consistent at all with your mobility stuff. Now, that's because you go too hard at the start, and then you kind of just pull back into yourself, and then you're wondering why in November you just don't have the same interest in it. So with that, you need to look at not training too hard, but just making sure that you're doing enough, really. Now, focusing on the wrong type of training, that's people that are like, you'll hear it so common with going for like 5Ks or 10K runs because they're trying to build up their endurance. Rarely are you running at that pace in a match, that you're just running a nice easy 5K pace. So it is important to look at high speed running more so than kind of low easy endurance stuff. What you could do if you wanted to kind of get a nice sweat, because I know people do like to get that, they don't want to go out sprinting, or the weather isn't or the pitches or whatever aren't set up for sprinting in January and February. You can go on a bike, like get on an Aerodyne bike, maybe a treadmill, anything like that, a skier, just to get the heart rate up. That's another way of doing it. Now, it's obviously not going to be perfect, and it's not going to translate exactly over to sprinting, but it can be good for just building up a base. Now, outside of that, I would look at maybe people not taking time to rehab the injuries that they had the year before, so they're waiting for the season to actually kick off. Or a lot of the time what happens actually is that you forget that you had it. You forget that there was like a minor hamstring tear, and you just gave it a couple of days and it went away, so it wasn't a problem. Or you forget that you maybe hurt your knee, or that you hurt your AC joint in your shoulder, or that your back was going into spasm or cramp, and you wait till a new season comes around, and the injury is obviously likely to reoccur because of that, because it wasn't taken care of fully. It healed to more of a resting state, so when you start getting back into a lot of activity, then it'll start to flare again. So I would look at that as well and say that it needs to be focused on a huge amount. Then really you're looking at people just not doing any type of mobility work in the off season. When I talk about mobility work as well, rarely do I talk about foam rolling, and I know most GA players specifically anyway will use foam rolling as their mobility work, soft tissue as their mobility that counted towards it. I really don't count foam rolling towards it, because it's a very short term. It's a short term. What's it? It has short term effects basically. It doesn't last at all. You feel it's sore doing it. You feel great after it, but then the next day you have the same range and the same ability. Now, it can be used in conjunction with other things like foam rolling, and then go through your mobility session. Perfect. That works well, because you have extra range. You start to use it. Your body gets used to using it. Your nervous system gets used to using it. And then you can build strength in that range. But just foam rolling for the sake of it while you're watching TV and thinking that it's recovery or that it is mobility training or movement training, it's not. It's not. It's a very small adjunct, I guess, that you can use in, like, you can use it with your training. You don't need to, like, just using by itself isn't the main thing. So I guess they're the main issues that you'll see with preseason training. The main problems that you see with people, like, I guess that don't structure properly. Now, what to focus on or what should you be doing in the preseason? Well, there's loads of things, and everyone has a different perspective on it, or might add or might take away some things. So what I'm throwing in here would be things that I focus on with clients in the preseason. And really, I think the first thing is structuring out a plan for yourself, or having someone else do it for you. Basically, the plan is, it should work in the gym, so you obviously need to build strength. You need to have your recovery right. You need to start getting consistent with your sleep, your diet and your hydration, as well as you need to return to the pitch and do some return to running exercise or return to running program. Now, if you touch on all of those areas, you will be setting yourself up to have a good preseason and to move into your season effectively. Now, when you are looking at them individually and you break them down, what I would say is that you have to build gradually. So just going back and knocking everything out is not going to be good for you. You need to also plan your rest weeks. Okay, so that's one of the most important parts of the plan. If you're pushing for 6 to 8 weeks, you need to be looking at getting a rest week at the end of that block. And the rest week is for adaptation. It's like a deload week, just relaxing, doing things that you enjoy and letting the body adapt. If you do that, then you will start to find that you will get the most out of the training that you did before. You'll get your motivation back, and when you get back on the pitch, you'll be feeling good and you'll be ready to go. And it's harder to structure rest weeks in season because of the way training is structured. A lot of times when people don't have a game, they up their amount of training that they do. And in some situations, they should be looking at turning down the amount of training they do as opposed to upping it. So with that, that's why I'm saying you need to plan it out in advance and then look at your rest of your season and see every 6 to 8 weeks when you can fit in another rest week or deload week. That's such an effective method of reducing your risk of injury, I guess optimizing adaptation to the training that you've done, and just refreshing the body and mind and kind of keeping the motivation high and keeping the competitive edge there. In your preseason training then as well, what I would say is extremely, extremely important is to listen to your body. And you hear that saying all the time, listen to the body. But what I mean is that you need to, at the end of a session or the start of a session or during a session or the next day, just take note of what areas are hurting and what areas are feeling tight or feeling sore, what areas may be aggravated, and then what areas actually feel good so that you're having no issues. And by doing that, then you'll have a better idea of what you need to work on in the gym and what you need to work on in your mobility program. So that is really important. I can't emphasize enough about listening to the body, and it's something I really, really push with anyone that I do work with, because it does really, I guess you can optimize your own training then when you do that, because you know when to push, you know when to pull back, you know when it's time to take 2 days off, and you know when, okay, I can go for a high volume week here now and I can relax at the end of it. So I would push that for everybody. And it's at the start, you might not be as good at it, but as you go through it, you get better at it. On top of that, obviously you need to focus on rehabbing and prehabbing old injuries. So taking the time to go through a full program. Really, as I said before, you should be on the prehab phase here as opposed to the rehab phase. Unless you got a surgery late in the winter, then obviously you're going to be on the rehab phase. Or you got a surgery at some stage that you're getting back. That's obviously makes, you need to rehab that. But then once you finish your rehab, you need to move straight into the prehab. There's no point just rehabbing and getting straight back into play. And obviously your return to play should reflect that. Your program of return to play should reflect the prehab that you'll be doing as well. So you don't want to miss out on the start of next season, or the start of your season, I should say, because you didn't take the time to prehab an injury that you knew that you had or that was in the background. I touch on then adding into the program working on weak areas. Now, what are weak areas? Only you will know yourself what weak areas are. You can go to somebody and they can tell you don't have this much range, or they can say that when I manually tested your muscles you weren't strong here, or they can say that your glutes aren't firing. But all in all, anything that I said there is generally not that big of an issue. Now, if you're after surgery and you're lacking range, okay, that's probably more of an issue. But if you've trained for your entire life without a certain range, it's probably not that much of a problem. and there is people that will push it and say, all right, you need to do this, you need to do that. Usually it's not that much of a problem because your body has adapted to it and there's a reason it hasn't given you that range. So there's nothing wrong with improving that and working on it. But you need to be careful because in the body, there's a chain reaction for anything that you do. If you increase the range in your big toe, that's going to have a massive effect on your hip when you're running. Okay, so that's why you need to look at it. And obviously if your hip and then your back and everything. So you need to be safe with what you're doing and understand that it's all connected. It's not just increasing the range in the big toe. That will have an effect on your, let's say, your pronation, supination. That's going to have an effect on your ankle, which is going to have an effect on your knee. I'm not saying that these things are going to cause you any injury. No, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that it does have an effect up along the chain. So if you are increasing range and if you are working on something, make sure that you are connecting it all together as well at the same time. Now, other weak areas could be problem areas that cropped up in the season. It could be like you have like an Achilles tendinopathy. It could be that you have a hamstring tendinopathy. It could be that you're cutting, like sidestepping, jumping, landing, your balance are poor. It could be anything to do that. You're stopping, starting, or acceleration and deceleration. That could be poor. You have time to work on these in the preseason. If you do it, you will see a huge improvement in your performance in season. With gym work then, obviously you're moving towards a general prep. If you have that done in the off season, you can move towards more of a strength program. And with that, you can, like, there's a lot of research showing now that having good levels of strength in your preseason will equate, or can, I suppose, have a huge effect. It does have a huge effect, a significant effect at that, on your ability to recover after a game or after a training session. So there's a good bit of research, and I have a friend on before, and I will hope to get him on again, about working on strength in the preseason so that when you start getting back into the season, you recover quicker from all your sessions. And the guy, it's Larkin Daly. We did it. There is a podcast called Analyzing Recovery Protocols in GAA. It's around about number 25, and we go into detail on that. So it's a perfect time of the year to work on that, as well as working on accessory stuff, targeting weak areas, mixing rehab and prehab into your plan. All of those need to be taken into account. And with your gym work, you can also mix your mobility stuff in there, so you're not just always doing something. On top of that, I would say to start to build good routine and habits, as well as look at your body composition. Now, with body comp, you want to be taking your body fat down. Generally, if it's very low at the start of the season, there's probably no need to take it down, because you'll obviously need a certain amount of calories and protein and that to recover from sessions. But you don't want to gain a whole lot of weight and fat especially. But you don't need to be in perfect shape, under 10% body fat either. You need to just watch your diet, make sure that you're eating right, make sure that you're taking in enough protein, making sure that you are obviously eating healthy foods, whole foods, and that you are very consistent with that. I would also say that if you start to build a consistent mobility routine, 10-minute routine in the off season and in the preseason, it'll be very easy to keep on top of that as you get into season. And with that, it could be that you do it the nights that you train, the nights in your gym or during your gym sessions. It could be that you just do it every morning when you get up out of bed. You do 2 or 3 exercises to help you relax and to get the body moving again. All of those things will have a big impact on your body, on your state of mind, because the more boxes that you tick off, the more invested you will be. And on top of that, then your performance will also improve. So it is just about ticking off the small boxes and building consistent routines and building sustainable habits, so that when you get into season, there's not that much of a change. And you can focus on the skills. You can focus on the things that you need to focus on. When you build good routines in the preseason, they will transfer over once you are, I guess, consistent with them, and that you're not trying to build crazy ones, and ones that will fit into your lifestyle. So guys, that's everything that I really wanted to touch on today. I don't want to go into a huge amount more detail on it. I wanted to just focus on the main things of what you should be focusing on, the main problems, and why it's important. If you listen back to that, if you kind of pick out a few points that maybe you hadn't thought of before, or things that you had thought of before but you just need to put them into a bit of practice, I would say take out a journal, write down, reflecting on the year before, issues that you had during the year. I would say write down what your sleep is like and how you can build a consistent sleep routine. And I'd also say write down a basic mobility program, a basic strength program, and a very, very, very basic way that you're going to structure your rest weeks. If you do that, you'll be setting yourself up for success. On top of that, if anyone else is interested, and let's say if you have injuries and you're getting consistent knee injuries, or if you're getting consistent hip injuries, or hamstring injuries, or back injuries, whatever it is, shoulder, get in contact, send me a message. I have no problem. You can ask me any questions on it that you'd like. And if you are interested in jumping on board, perfect. I take people on and we'll get your preseason set up perfectly so that you are in the best shape possible going into the normal season again. Okay, so let me know. You can either send me an email on mobilityshooter@gmail.com. You can get on my Instagram page at mobilityshooter. And if you want, there's a form that you can fill out there, and it just basically sets up a call, and then we can discuss everything in a bit more detail and make sure that we're both on the same page. And then if you're interested in going forward, perfect. If not, there's no problem either. So that's everything, guys. I hope everyone's doing well. Happy New Year to everybody. And yeah, that's all from me today. Have a good one.